Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Sunday Talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle.
And I'm the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Woo. Yes, and we are back to our single talk Sundays, which we are grateful for because our third Sunday of each month tends to be very busy when we do our two talks because we have our other talk followed by our weekly talk. And if our weekly talk time, which is 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Sundays, does not work for you, you can always join us during our quote unquote other talk time. Like I said, every third Sunday of each month, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So that's my little, you know, bulletin announcement for that while I'm thinking of it. But other than that, we have our YouTube spiel, of course, during which I tell you that it is incredibly helpful to us if you are a new person. Um, Liking the videos that you watch and enjoy, subscribing to our channel if you want to continue to see our content and to engage with us and see that we are active every single week. And leave a comment so you can engage with us and with others who are part of the Nine-Sided Circle community and who might like to answer questions you may have in their own way or offer their own stories in response to your own. All of those things are really cool. Plus, of course, if you see a video that you really enjoy and think others would benefit from, we encourage you to share it too. Anything else I've missed, Mushtaq? Do you want to do the fund drive stuff?
Oh, yes. As it happens, we would be incredibly grateful if you have a little bit of spare change laying around. Either, like I say, look under your couch cushions. You can always find spare change under there. Check the pockets of old coats. And if you have any and you don't need it for things that are more important, send it along to us because that's what keeps this going. And like everything else, all of our bills for running this thing have gone up. So we are extremely grateful for any help you are giving us. If you find that you like this content and would like more of it, that's one way you can encourage us to talk.
Yeah. And if you would like more one on one engagement, you can always schedule a session with me or Mushtaq or both of
But
us together.
I have to say, my calendar is getting really full and I'm
Yes.
about to put a cap on it. So if you want to talk, get in there fast.
Yep. And of course, I am available as well.
Yeah, she's actually better at all of this than me, but nobody believes that because she's short and cute and I'm old and crusty or something.
Wise. with with quotations. All right. So if you're interested in that, you can email us or you can hit us up on Facebook via private message and we'll give you more details. So, without further ado, we are continuing a conversation that we started a few weeks ago in which we talked about trances, everyday trances that we are all falling into all of the time. And we wanted to continue that conversation by getting into the ways in which perhaps we might be able to challenge those everyday trances.
Yeah,
I think
have you
we'll have some interesting ways in which these things show up and how we might be able to turn them upside down. You were saying, Mushtaq?
carry on, you're doing fine.
Well, I don't know where to start. Where should we start?
Let's start by recapitulating around the idea of most of the time, many people, not anybody here, but those people out there in the world tend to be operating mechanically. What does that mean? Let me give you a few examples. If
Hmm.
you've been on any kind of a social media forum, Facebook and whatever, and you watch all of the conversations that are going on, you may have noticed that you can predict what everybody is going to say given any stimulus. Anybody here notice that?
I'm seeing some head nods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason you can do that is because the behavior that is being exhibited is entirely mechanical, stimulus response. There is something that triggers the reaction, and the reaction that comes up is the one that's been programmed in. Politics is a good way to see this. You get a room of 3 conservatives, so-called, and 3 liberals, so-called, and you give them any stimulus. Homelessness. You know how each one of them is going to react. You never get actual thought. You all following me? So what if each and every one of us does this? And so our responses tend to be programmed. And it's a form of trance. It's a form of literally going to sleep and not being conscious of what you're doing or saying or how you're acting.
And that's the interesting thing, right? No
Yeah.
one's immune from
Yeah.
this.
No one is immune to this. You can become more or less immune to it with a lot of practice. But every time you let yourself run on automatic, you're asleep. You are not conscious. You are not awake. You are not present.
And we've talked about contexts in which that can be useful, right?
Yes.
Like one of the most common examples is driving a car. If you have to micromanage each movement and every single noticing, that's going to muddy your ability to drive in a way that is responsive and well handled because you're overthinking everything. You don't
Yeah.
want to overthink something that can be basically put on autopilot and keep you safer that
Yeah.
way.
If you try and drive a car with your conscious mind, you're going to wrap it around a tree. But that being said, you can be present while the part of you that drives does its thing. And that is a totally different thing. And that can be very cool.
But what we're touching on today is the kind of trances that are maladaptive, that are not helpful, that are not appropriate to their context,
The
or
kind,
that
the
just,
kind of trances that keep you asleep and keep
yeah,
you from actually being able to do the work on yourself that you need to do if you want all of this enlightenment stuff.
exactly. Mm-hmm.
There really isn't any such thing as enlightenment as far as I can tell, but we use that as a placeholder for what it actually is.
A thing for which there are no words, really. No
Yeah.
great ones.
So how do you begin to address this? This is not a rhetorical question. I want you to think about the answer for this, because I can give you my answer, but you may have a better answer. So, any thoughts?
Why don't you rephrase the question?
How do you begin
Sounds.
to address the lack of consciousness in your behavior?
There you go. Yeah. Osama, you want to give it a shot?
I would start with breath awareness, breath.
That is a very important step. And believe it or not, that's not the first step.
Yeah, I was going to say self-observation and self-remembering.
That's not the first step either, though that's a very early step.
Okay.
These are good ones.
Yeah, none of you are wrong.
Wake up.
Even before that,
Ah, no idea.
Maria says stop. But what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to tell you my answer to this. If you
James, I'm sorry. Before we go ahead, did you have something you wanted to offer?
No, because I'm no longer so confident that I can give a good answer and listen to everyone
Yeah.
else's. So now I'm just, in fact, I will re-mute myself. There you go.
All right. All right. Mushtaq, your response.
Okay. In order to wake up, you have to want to wake up, and you have to want it more than anything else in the world. If your desire to be awake is not incredibly powerful and passionate, you just won't do it. And when you can find that deep of a desire to be awake, to experience the real, then you can make intention, nayat. And that intention will help propel you into the practices that will keep you awake. But without that desire, without that burning passion, it ain't going to happen.
Because that's what keeps you motivated to
Yeah.
keep going when it gets challenging, when it's harder than you expected it to be, when it's tiring, when it's annoying to be awake.
Yeah. And to understand this, think of the movie The Matrix. Here is this whole universe, has all the good stuff, all the best food, all the best housing, all of the things that you could possibly want. And then there's the real world and oatmeal. If you think about the movie, the guy who wanted to be put back in the Matrix, the guy who turned out to be the villainous traitor,
Who enjoys a tasty steak, right?
yeah, that response is one that we see a lot. So that brings us to the question, do you have the kind of passion for experiencing the real and the true that can carry you through to the other side of the matrix? Crickets.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one because I mean we spoke on the in the last talk about this desire for the divine, to experience the real, the truth. And you know, personally, as I shared in that call, there's these I don't know, maybe I'm putting certain strings on the intention itself, trying to have it be a particular way. But within myself, I do find there are subtleties as far as that desire being attributed to either knowledge or not wanting to live a life that is on autopilot, which is fear of that. I still have not yet experienced that desire to be pure desire of the real or of the truth, which I don't know if I don't know what's right and wrong here, or if there is such a thing. But yeah, that's something that I'm still exploring or experimenting with, as far as that intention and that desire, or that ashq, that fire passion. And definitely for myself, I know it's there. I know it's been there. However, as I look at it more, trying to understand it, or maybe that's the problem, is trying to understand that ashq where mind has no place in there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just talking at this point, but
No, but you're making sense. It's an interesting problem. And it's one that each of us have to confront when we ask ourselves, is this important enough to create literally sometimes upheaval in my life in order to get it?
Sometimes it's a day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute question. Do I
Yeah,
want this bad enough? Yeah. Ian and then Ilmar.
I was just going to say I've just had a week where I've been finding it very difficult to not be a positive pilot. And I've been aware of that as well. I just, for some, excuse me, for some reason, I just haven't had the energy to push it. But at least I'm aware of it.
Yes, yes. And that gets into ability too, which goes hand in hand with desire. Like, do we have the energy? Do we have the capacity? And sometimes we just don't. And we need to survive until we do again. Get by.
Yeah, I think of it as sometimes you just want a hamburger and fries.
Sometimes you just want to play video games for a couple hours and you'll think about being awake when that 2 hours is up, you know?
Yeah, but you'll still come back to the being awake.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ilmar, what do you got to say?
Well, I don't have much to say, but I do have, I guess, it's an inquiry, really. I mean, this business of desire for a different state, say a state of awakeness or something, it's really tricky, it seems to me. It's got almost two sides to it. On the one hand, it seems required almost. On the other hand, it seems to me it could be a trap. For example, I have a friend who is, has been meditating intensely for years, and it's everything is sort of oriented around, hey, am I gonna get, I guess in his view, enlightened or not? And you can see where that's actually has trapped him into a particular identity of the seeker. And I think in his case at least, and maybe other cases as well, that becomes a hindrance almost. And yet at the same time, I think it's true that you have to have some of that motivation to pursue the whole thing in the first place. So it's very much a double-sided coin here.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine once said, the point is to wake up, not to get a PhD in waking up.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah.
And your friend may be working on his PhD.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
But it is what it's an identification with a certain, I mean, that's his persona in a way. The persona is being the seeker, and
Then
he
that is
gets,
his sleep. That's his trance.
yeah. And it's not helping him to wake up to be that identified with that. And I think that's one of the dangers of sometimes of not so much talking about these desires, but with this I mean, at some point, it just is. But it's not something that's out there to be reached for and desired and so forth, you know.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
gets lost. That gets
Maybe
lost.
a Zen teacher will walk through this dude's life one day and say, "Oh, you want enlightenment? Give up all of this meditation."
Actually, I tried to point him to a Zen teacher for just for that reason. They didn't attend.
Well, you know, the attachment may be really, really strong, and
Yeah. Well, and it's in retrospect a justification for his life. I mean, I've seen that myself. I mean, you know, at some point I'd say, hey, you know, it's been a worthwhile life because I have been searching, you know, and had this strong intention. And there's truth to that. And yet there's also, it's a hindrance also, you know, and I think one has to see both of those sides to really appreciate.
Yeah.
Actually, the stickle we're in.
Both,
You know?
both of those sides to me are the same side.
Say more.
When uh, when you are that devoted to the process, to the image, to the framework of waking up, it becomes a trap.
Mhm.
And this is why, you know, the old Zen koan, when you meet the Buddha along the road, you got to kill him.
Yeah.
I suspect this refers to that.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does.
Yeah. So,
Which is
yeah, your
maybe
friend.
one reason why I'm fascinated by, you know, different workable means for waking up, you know, because I think if one is not just stuck into one of them, you know, there's more a sense of looseness to it, you know, and hence I'm on this call for you,
Yeah.
to find out. And
And in mere moments, we are going to dive into that.
yeah. So I think that brings up some interesting thoughts to me about getting so lost in the seeking that it becomes a trance in itself.
Yeah. And Aaron just referred to
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Let's touch on Maria's question real quick.
And then Osama has a thought, and then Aaron's thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Maria says, the desire is often greater for me when the pain of unconsciousness is too great.
Yeah. The trouble with unconsciousness is that it takes a while to notice the pain, but you're absolutely right.
Yes. Osama.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to what Omar just shared as far as that double-sided coin, because even within myself, I do certain times find that even inner dhikr sometimes does feel like a waswasa, like the whispers of
Yeah.
even inner dhikr sometimes feels like a waswasa or whispers of you know of evil, which is
Whispers. Yeah.
right, like because it is like, is it taking me away from the here and now? Am I fully? It is very double-sided. It's such a fine line, I guess. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to point that out. That even that I do
Yeah. And you're
find in myself.
absolutely right about that.
Yes, I agree. And I find this fascinating because we know how many people would be very challenged by you having said that. Like, how could that be a problem? You're making an effort to be pious or attentive to the divine or whatever it is, you're doing your duty. But again, this is how things that on the surface seem to be exactly what we should be doing become a
Yeah.
trap.
And it's not like this has not been addressed.
Yeah.
This this last week, I have been contemplating on Surah 107, I believe it is.
Of the
And,
Quran.
yeah, in the Quran, and they're like 2 or 3 lines into it. It says, "Woe to him who prays And you're like, oh my God, what?
What?
And
Pearl
then,
clutching, yes.
yes, the next line is, woe to him who is heedless in his prayer. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, because we've all been heedless in our prayers. And what you're talking about, Osama, I think is the exact same thing. You know, when you are heedless in your internal dhikr, that's exactly what the Quran is going woe to,
Yep. Or
or
even
so it seems to me.
that's the, the quote unquote sacred take on it, but even just like saying to our partner, I love you, the way that we say it, the context in which we say it, or we just like saying it mechanically, habitually, it still can feel good, but it's not a conscious saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
What
right.
does Aaron say here?
So Aaron says, is it like becoming really obsessed over all the details in the door you were supposed to walk through? That's a really
Yeah, that
an
we're
excellent way to put
stealing
it.
that one, dude.
Yeah,
Just be forewarned. We're gonna file off the serial numbers and give it a new paint job and use it here and there.
I
That's
like
a
that.
perfect metaphor for this.
And James says, trances are trances, be they sacred or profane.
Yep. So, what tools do we have to find our way to out of the trance? I mean, it would be so easy if I could do this like one does when one's dealing with somebody in trance. You know, you talk them back up. You bring them from down when they're in the trance. Now finding your body, feel your body. Notice your breath now. And as I go, you can count 3 breaths and notice that you have 2 eyes and 1 mind. And then you can wake up and you're out of trance and it's like magic. But it doesn't work quite that way for this trance. So we have 2 tools. In Arabic, they are called mahasbe and marakabe. In English, we call them self-observation and self-remembering. So muhasabah is literally to keep account. And in this context, it means you are watching yourself. You know, when you run into these words, they will often have a religious connotations like, oh, you are counting your good deeds and your bad deeds and things like that. This isn't what we're talking about. This is notice when you find a trance. Notice when something gives you a stimulus and you respond mechanically to it. There's plenty of that. Most of you here are on Facebook, which means you have loads of opportunity to respond mechanically to other people's posts. And maybe you do. So what if you came across the post and you immediately felt an affinity for it and you wanted to cheer that person on? And instead of acting, you took a moment for reflection to take account of what you're doing. And you ask yourself, am I awake? Am I doing this from a place of my own truth, or am I just doing this from my programming? And then you find something that you want to disagree with. You do the same thing. Take that out into the world. You know, when you are listening to the news and somebody on your side wins, you go, yay. Somebody on your side loses, you go, boo. Whatever the side is. I mean, we just went through an election here for something that was undoubtedly important to someone somewhere. And people were both happy and unhappy about it. But that happiness and lack of happiness were mechanical. And if you had that, that gives you an opportunity for self-observation, self-reflection, of taking account of your presence and or absence. And that's the ultimate accounting here. Are you present or are you absent? When you go, oh, I have been absent to this, this is where muraqabah comes in. One translation of the root of that word is to guard. And in this case, it is guarding your awakeness through self-remembering, through that reflexive looking back on your own consciousness and going, yes, this is awake, and holding it for as long as you can, which is usually whole seconds before you drift off into trance again. Then you use your self-observation to bring you back. It's a slow process at first. And you'll know that you're making progress when you can look at these things that usually stimulate you and you do not react to them. The key word here is react. You can respond to them if it's appropriate and necessary. The reaction is a trance induction. Does this make sense?
Any questions?
Yeah, this is the part where I want to encourage you guys to talk about this, because I want to make sure that you understand the process of this, because this is one of very few processes I know that actually work.
I appreciated the statement that reaction is a trance induction.
Yes.
That's very motivating and very clarifying. Yeah. That's kind of all I've got to say. That just struck me. I don't have anything to add that hasn't been said by everyone else yet. But yeah.
And we all have it. You know, if I say to you, punk music is shit, you might have a reaction. It'll take you down to trance. And if you say, Janis Joplin just screeched, you and me are going to have a fight. Unless I catch that. You see how that works? He's still mad at me for the punk music.
I'll get over it eventually.
Okay, I have faith in you, James.
Thank you.
Going back a little bit to the previous area we were talking about with wanting this, but I think it also might slot in here, is one of the things I did have some insights into earlier this week is that I became I was thinking about intention and goals and things like that. And one of the things I became very aware of is that I'm not at all motivated by goals that are formed by intellect. and theories. I'm really only motivated when there's something a lot deeper that drives me, but I don't really know what to call it.
Okay. James, do you have an idea on that?
Well, it was something I heard Ajay Shanti speak about, struck quite the chord. There's the survival motivation of, okay, you can see that the sleep of the machine is doing damage. When you can actually see that.
Yeah.
But he also spoke about, well, he was saying that the thing that's going to take you all the way through to enlightenment is a passion for the truth, for reality to know itself. And he argued that that's already present in you, just the ego takes it over and messes with it and turns it into other things. Any healthy human being, I think, would have to have a kind of instinct for reality, even if it's covered over with a lot of mush or being appropriated by other agenda. So it's not just the pain when you see the pain caused by the sleep. That is, good to know because it often has real practical consequences for you. There's also just a passion for the real.
Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying you have to have this overburning desire for this. That passion for the real has to be so hot that it consumes everything else. And when you listen to Adya, especially if you listen to him early on when he was talking about his own awakening, you can see and hear the passion in him as the primary driver of his work. And by the way, Osama, I put the two words that we're talking about here in Arabic to ask you for your opinion on my meanings for them, because you're going to know more about it than I do. And you'll also pronounce them better.
No pressure.
No pressure. No,
Yeah,
you're
no,
not.
they're definitely on point. Muhasaba and muraqaba. Muhasaba, self-accounting, as you shared, and muraqaba as
That one's trickier.
guarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because it's there's this sense of a root word of raqaba, which is neck, right? So it's kind of being at the top of a tower, kind of, right? So you're really watching over your guarding. Yeah.
And that is
Interesting.
this wonderful description of self-remembering. Because when you are in the practice of self-remembering, you are guarding your consciousness. You are guarding your awake state from the 10,000 tons of sleep that would like to fall upon you.
I can, when it comes to self-accounting, self-observation, to watch oneself in action. I remember going through some challenges with that one because at some points, depending on what was happening, sometimes I didn't know if I was tricking myself into being aware or not, or watching myself into that action.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
How did you solve it?
Well, for actions that are not too in my face, I can take some time to pause really and create some space and allow myself to really go in and feel within myself that awareness and give myself time and space for that. However, when it's something that is in the moment, really quick, and it's whether it's a conversation or something that I have to, or I feel that I have to respond quickly, it's still a challenge. So the way that I go with it is I allow myself to respond or react, but I'm still observing. I'm like, I'll
And that's
observe.
the exact perfect thing to do. Doing that will eventually allow you to make a break before the reaction starts. There's actually a term for it in English, which is a cortical thalamatic pause. When one goes into reaction, the theory is that it's the thalamus that is doing the reacting. That's part of the old brain. And it's all about fight or flight and that sort of thing. And the cortex is all about higher thought functions. And so if you can make a pause the moment before the reaction takes place, it gives you a chance to do your self-remembering and act from a place of consciousness rather than a place of reaction. That's the theory. Some days are better than others.
Yeah, and this is why we talk about practicing the pause in any random moment, because it's going to be easier to do it in a low-key moment, as you said, than in a high tension or situation that needs a quick response from you. You got to get the reps in, as it were.
Yep.
Yeah. Abraham.
Hello. Yeah, it's interesting that you said at the tail end of what you were describing of getting the reps in, because as I'm hearing the conversation of the consistent states of trance that at least I personally experience countlessly within my own life and many, many times, of getting the reps in, the more that I find within my own life that I'm able to kind of go, even for a second, hold that space and hold that container, even a millisecond, it it allows, how can I say it? I can't hold on to the experience, but it stretches the experience further and further, time and
Yes.
time and time
Yeah.
again.
And you're exactly right. And that's what we're advocating, is exactly that. The slow, sometimes tedious process of building up your spiritual muscles so you can grab hold of awakeness and hold on to it, lift it up, hold it there, don't drop it. This takes a minute.
Yes. And I think one of the most beautiful experiences of my own life of noticing in that without necessarily needing to examine a book or learning this knowledge was somatically. It's through my own body physically of noticing whether I'm failing a rep and continuing going back and back and back to actually get it stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm never going to be infinitely stronger,
Right.
or
Yeah.
get into a state of infiniteness in that. But going back, it builds muscle and builds tolerance over time, especially under stress induced states somatically. If that makes any sense.
It
It makes
makes
perfect
absolute sense. Yes, you are dead on with that.
psychologically it's great too, because you learn how to trust yourself. You learn, okay, I can do this. It's not going to be perfect every time, but I know I'm capable. And sometimes that's what you really need in order to keep feeling like what you're doing is working, that it's getting you to a place where you're able to be present. It's kind of like, as we were talking about earlier with Ilmar, we go through this process, we push ourselves, And then letting go becomes part of that process of pushing ourselves, in the sense that we have the confidence to let go of the reins and not have to try so hard. The trust is there. Yes, and Maria agrees. Somatically is how this happens for me.
Yep. We have a body for a reason. Your body is your main interface with reality.
Would you like to add to that, Maria? I see your hand up. There you
Yeah,
are.
even as I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm thinking about a recent trigger that brought up an automatic sort of somatic response in me. And I'm thinking about it now. I feel this burning in my sacral area. So I'm sitting with this feeling of what that brought up in me. And at the same time, I'm recognizing the suffering that that created. And I'm feeling a longing to wake up from that. And so at the moment, it feels like there's a fire in me. And I'm not trying to make anything happen. I'm just noticing this sort of cognitive maybe dissonance within. And if in my experience, when I'm at this sort of meeting of these two opposites, is where some change happens and some letting go. But it fully allowing the discomfort and this intense longing, and then just letting them be together. So yeah, thank you for the reminder of this, because sometimes I will sit with whatever is coming up in day-to-day life, relationship issues, personal struggles, and the emotion will take me to a somatic experience, and then just sitting with all of that and with the truth. It's almost in the past, it's almost been an alchemical process. But it still feels sort of slow and steady, and that I need to make time for looking at what is triggering me, what are the things that are causing me an emotional reaction or response. Anyway, that I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for sharing, Maria, and I'm sure the others may resonate with that as well. So thanks. So I think we have, oh, okay. We have Ilmar and then we have James.
Yeah, I kind of want to pick up on Maria's point, I'm wondering how much. Okay, I guess what I feel is that these somatic experiences have something to contribute. They have in a sense, they have a message. And I'm wondering what if there's a value in allowing them to articulate that message, instead of just tolerating them, but encouraging to, what is that fire in the sort of actually trying to communicate? And sometimes it seems to me that kind of an approach can open up stuff which is maybe not quite on the surface yet, And I'm wondering what your anybody's thoughts are on that as process almost,
I know what that feels like in the doing. I'm trying to figure out how to verbalize it. For me, it's almost as though, as Maria was saying, for me, the intensity of whatever it is meets my desire to be present. And it's almost as if my being present allows me to ride the wave in a non-dismissive way of whatever that somatic experience might be. And if I'm not present, then all kinds of stories could hijack me and run away with that and project themselves onto that experience. But if I'm able to be present, then to the best of my ability, something true-ish, truer, or true emerges on its own that doesn't require me to disappear into this story in order to understand it. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense to me. I mean, it's just because I mean, certainly earlier in my life, I've kind of have a tendency to ignore the body, ignore its messages, and that I don't think has served me well. What has served me a lot better is to try to be attuned to them and, in a sense, encourage them to deliver the message, whatever the hell it might be. Not necessarily that they're the oracle. Then the message may not be spot on, but still, it seems to be a very valuable source, which sometime in my life and in some circles I don't think is acknowledged enough, is given enough credit. So thank you. Yeah, I think I do see what you're saying.
Agreed. And we have not spent a whole chunk of time on, in terms of like reactivity and somatic experience, but we do not dismiss that. It is not our policy to say that those somatic happenings are irrelevant and should just be ignored. So I would hate we would never give that impression purposefully. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And I think we don't give that impression because we do talk a lot about having to use your body in this.
Right. Yeah. Which has always been important to me. I mean, I know there are a lot of, I don't want to say traditions, because I do think that when you get down deep, most traditions account for this stuff. But I think the way that it tends to be taught these days, there is a lot of disembodiment. There is a lot of alienation from the body. Not only in the way that traditions are taught in popular culture, but just in our culture generally speaking. So, we can take account of that in our taking account, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get Kristen.
Yeah, James and Kristen. And then
Let's get Kristen's, because James has had a chance to get a couple of questions up. So we'll get hers first.
Sure.
Lay it on us, Kristen.
I guess it's like something I find myself, this question comes up when I encounter a situation or a person who is a trigger for trance for me, which is, is this, okay, I'm having this trigger every time I have this conversation with this person. Is this, where my work is? Is this the challenge? Is this like the place to get my reps in? Or is the fact that it's always like this, I always fall into a trance, we always get into an argument, the situation always plays out the same way, is this like an indication that I like just need to get out of here?
May very well be that, if it happens all the... So I had a relationship like this once, and it just never worked because we triggered each other all the time. And I could feel it setting me back. And finally, I managed to extricate myself from it and was so much better for it. Because living with that kind of triggering all the time was not healthy for me. If it's somebody who, you see once a week or even once a day, that's not quite as bad, but it's still something that you got to ask yourself, is it worth doing the work that it takes not to be triggered by this? Because there are many, many opportunities in life to not be triggered. And
to work on the
yeah,
triggers.
and yeah, some of them are more useful than others. So ask your soul, it's like, hey, soul, is this hurting me? Is this hurting you? And if the answer is no, carry on. If the answer is yes, consider that.
I think it's.
Thank you.
I hope that
Thank
was
you for
not a
sharing
depressing
that.
answer.
No, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I was just going to add, I can see the temptation when we're up against something challenging like that to try to tough it out and try to be like, whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But, this is where we tune in, right? This is where that listening to our bodies, our nervous systems, to our soul, as Mushtaq said as well, and ask, like, is this worth it? Am I really going to gain from this, or am I just adding to my own unnecessary suffering? Because as Mushtaq said, I don't need to, I'm just going to echo that and say that there will be no shortage of opportunities to strengthen and get the reps in if we're looking for them. And we don't need to just bear it like that.
Yeah. And this is going to get into the last part of this discussion. That which does not kill me makes me stronger. It's what we call a thought terminating cliche.
Say that again, it got cut off a little bit.
A thought terminating cliche.
Yeah.
It's designed to make you stop thinking. And the truth of the matter is that that which does not kill you may make you stronger, but it doesn't necessarily make you healthier.
Mm-hmm.
And healthy is better than strong.
It may make you more checked out as you try to endure.
Yeah.
As Maria says, discernment. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's always the question of, do I need that kind of strength?
Sorry, James. What was that?
Oh, just the way you're talking now is kind of already addressing what I want to raise. Just a more of a cautionary thing. I'm always interested in how these techniques can be misused, how they can go wrong. When are you just dissociating? When you stop, are you just cramping up inside? I don't feel this.
Yeah.
All that kind of business. Well, you're already now alluding to it now anyhow.
Right.
That's all I want to talk about, the downside, how it can be not practiced, how it can
Right.
be misapplied. But I
And
think this
this,
is going. So
yeah.
There is an old Turkish saying that my sheikh used to occasionally remind me of, and it goes something like this. If you make yourself a donkey, there will always be somebody willing to ride you. And I would like to suggest that allowing yourself to fall into trance is in fact making yourself a donkey. And there are millions of people out there who would very much like to ride you. We talk about influence, and there is due influence, and there is undue influence. Due influence is cool. Due influence is what we try to use. That's where, well, say Osama. Osama usually listens to what I say. Sometimes, if I'm lucky. And when he does, I am in a position to influence him. And that means that I have to be incredibly careful about what I say and how I say it, because I want whatever influence I have to be healthy, not undue influence. Undue influence is what you get out of cults, where I go, Osama, I've helped you so much. You should give me all your money. That's undue influence. Don't give me all your money, dude.
It's all yours.
37 cents if you.
Our job is done.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your life savings.
So part of the process of dealing with this is inoculating yourself against the influences you are being bombarded with constantly. And I personally think that it is worse now than it has ever been in the entire history of the human race.
We don't have a very, our window of tolerance for stimuli is only so big, right? And our energy in a day is limited.
Yeah.
So when we have all these stimuli, all these demands coming at us all day, every day, it makes us easier and easier targets as our energy and our focus get whittled away in, more insidious ways day by day. It takes away from our ability to, if we're not careful, to do these reps, these self check-ins, where we're giving ourselves a pause to assess our reactions. We end up having to turn to discernment shortcuts, relying on stereotypes, the ways that we simplify things, sometimes very necessary. But as our time and our energy get frittered away more and more, we develop more and more judgmental shortcuts, which creates more and more opportunities for us to be sucked away into a trance state.
So, at the risk of making you paranoid, let me suggest to you that you are being bombarded with trance inductions every day, sometimes every minute. And it gets tiring. One of the easiest ways to put somebody in a trance is to just overload them. When I was doing hypnosis on a regular basis, if I had somebody who was like, you can't put me in a trance, I would just tell them a story. And the story would take at least 5 to 7 changes in it.
And just kind of like information overload, right?
Yeah, and you'd have to try and keep up with them. There comes a point where you can no longer keep up with those changes, and the only way to continue listening is to go into trance.
Just surrender, right?
Yeah.
Let it flow.
That's like, once upon a time, there was a frog named Fred. Fred the frog was hopping along the road one day, and he met a dragonfly. And he said, "Ho, dragonfly, how are you doing today?" And the dragonfly said, "Well, I'm actually having a terrible day. because I was just flying over the water and this fish tried to spit water at me. I could tell that it wanted to knock me down. And I have family. I have all of my little nymphs that I'm trying to watch over so that they can also grow into dragonflies. And so because of this, I went to my friend, the otter. And I said, Otter, I know a fish you can eat. And the otter said, well, I would love to help you, but I have to go and do a little thing with a mud bank. And you see how that story just keeps going, and you try and keep it all in your head. There comes a point where you can't do it anymore.
Yep. I felt that moment. Like, I have lights in my face. I'm watching all of you guys. I've had a long day. My back hurts. I just get sucked into letting it wash over me. I don't even know what's going on in the story, but I know that he's talking and it's pleasant, and here we go. I'm in a trance.
Yeah. And at that point, it's like, and if it's easier for you to just think about buying Acme soap rather than trying to follow this story, right? And the next thing you know, you have 400 boxes of Acme soap in your house, and you ain't even a coyote. This is happening to each and every one of us every day. And we have to protect ourselves from it. Because it goes back to being a donkey. You don't need to be a donkey. Those people don't need to ride you. They do not have your best interests at heart. They want something from you, and it may be something that you don't want to give them. They haven't asked permission to market to you in any way. And sometimes they'll say, yeah, we asked permission, but they didn't ask permission. They coerced permission. There's a difference there. And this is one of the areas where you have to use your keeping account. Because if you don't, you're going to spend all of your time in trance because it benefits them to keep you in trance. And I would like you to come out of trance.
So Maria says, then I'll touch on Ilmar raising his hand. Maria says, believing every thought that arises in consciousness would also be a form of self-induced trance.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yep.
Start believing in things, and the next thing you know, they own you.
Ilmar.
Yeah, that story you were just telling, that incident, it was kind of very interestingly illustrative, because you could either listen to the story and try to follow it, or you could observe the process of you trying to entrance us. And observing the process
Is
which
also
me,
an induction.
It's also an induction, but it's a different level of thing. There's a certain alertness required for that, though,
But
which
it's
is
also an
different.
induction. And you need to know that. One of my favorite trances, my favorite inductions for people who say, I don't think you can put me in trance, is I would go to them, no, Ilmar, you're right. I don't think I could, but let me teach you how to stay out of trance. Because I'm a hypnotist, I know about how to stay out of trance. The first thing you have to do is to not listen to the sound of my voice, because I'm a hypnotist and my voice is my tool. And if you find yourself listening to the sound of my voice, you're going to start going into trance. The next thing I want you to do is notice if you're blinking, because if you're not blinking, that means that you're going into trance, because we know that eyelid fixation is a kind of thing that trance does. If I keep talking like that, and the next thing you know, you're halfway to the deepest trance you can be in.
And again, by dispersing my attention basically on lots of separate items here.
Yeah,
That
and
seems to be
giving
the
you
technique.
things to resist.
Okay.
Because my next thing would be, but if you find your eyes blinking too much, like this, that's also a sign that you're going into trance. And that means that any moment your eyes are just going to shut and not open again. And I'm not telling you to do any of these things. I'm telling you not to do them.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if I was actually doing it, it would be more subtle. I have to do this in a really blatant way so you can see what I'm doing.
So the items seem to be dispersal of attention and arousing a resistance. Are those the two essential items for the trance-inducing trance?
It comes from Milton Erickson's reverse set. How to deal with somebody who wants to resist you. You just give them the resistance in the direction that you want them to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's this sense of like it's an energy output, right? So it's like sapping away that ability to resist through the resistance itself. That's how it strikes me.
Yeah. And
well, apply that to general life. I mean, how do
Yeah.
those two items come up in general life to produce the trance that presumably we are all in to some degree?
yeah, and it's there everywhere. I mean, I can use advertising as an example, but being home, it's nice because Noor and I don't do this to each other, but in every other relationship I have ever had, my partner and I had developed ways of putting ourselves into trance. And that was something that we would do.
Was that like an avoidance tactic?
It wasn't even an avoidance tactic. It was in a certain way, a sort of togetherness thing. You know, you go into trance and you create rapport, but the rapport is only around the trance that you've created. And I don't want to go into details and such like, because there's, first of all, there's not enough time. And that's the important thing. And Ed is waiting patiently to ask us a question.
Yeah. I kind of came in late, so I didn't get the first part. But my question is that would you say that the state of awakening and the state of trance both have a feeling? And if so, what is that feeling and what is that experience and what are those experiences like?
A feeling will be associated with it, and I can't tell you what it would feel like to you. I can only know what that feels like to me. So that's a question you need to ask yourself. When you are awake, how does it feel to be awake? How does it look to be awake? How does it sound to be awake? How do all of your senses engage in awakeness versus how do your senses engage in sleep? That's a very good question, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. I noticed that some time ago, me and a friend was sitting out, and I had been making a lot of efforts all day long. I mean, like all day long. And then finally we went to the park and we sat down and we were talking, and then time just started to go by very quickly. And I seemed to be able to notice the slightest little things that were going on. I could see the blades of grass, the butterflies moving, the sun coming down. This feeling of expansiveness. So that was kind of my experience.
Yeah. I think of it, awakeness, being awake is like pornography.
Yum.
I can't quite describe it, but I know it when I see it.
So, as you said, Mushtaq, then it is going to be unique to the individual in the sense that no one can tell you what it is supposed to feel like per se. Kind of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
And we can suggest, I mean, as we do in other videos constantly, we can offer ways in which you can take that step into being awake, but then you are going to have your own unique experience of what that is like in practice.
Yeah. And James points out something important. One of the things that is a very common response to being awake is everything is more vivid.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, when I did the in-person retreat in Sweden, I pretty much, it was like everything was in Technicolor and very immediate because I was putting all of my energy into being extremely present. And it took a lot of work. By the end of the week, I was ready to sleep 24/7. But it felt really incredible. And as I said, when I'm in trance, it's like I'm floating, kind of. I am hyper fixated sometimes, especially if something emotionally, we're using the word trigger, if something pulls me into an emotional reaction, it's like instant tunnel vision. I do not respond well to being interrupted in that state. It's like, you know, when you pet a cat and they don't like it and they turn around and try to bite you. That's what it feels like to me. And that's when I know, oh, I've fallen into a trance state around this issue that I'm dealing with.
For me, it's like a dullness. It's like things like, I think I can sum it up. It's like the lights have been dimmed way down and everything is dull. And I know that I'm there sometimes, and sometimes the will is not there just to move out of it. But I know that I'm there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think trances can have different qualities, but they're gonna have this underlying theme of not being fully there, not being fully present. Any other thoughts? How about you, Mushtaq? You got any other thoughts?
What, me think? Um, no, not really.
Yeah, I think we've offered a good starting point. There's something I want to touch on because I mentioned how, and Mushtaq mentioned how there are so many things pulling for our attention these days. I think one of the ways that we can combat that is through, as we said, getting the reps in with the pauses.
Yeah.
You can likewise use those pauses as an opportunity to take a few breaths to recharge.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Doing just a moment of your breath practice can be enough to pull you back to center.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that we use the term muraqabeh for self-remembering, or just also that's the term that we use, is that you are guarding your consciousness. And we need to do that in this world. Think of it, life is like a caravan going along the Silk Road. And all along the caravan are bandits. And they all want to rob you of your attention. So you have to have a guard at all times to keep your attention safe without getting paranoid, which is tough.
Yeah.
Was that poetic enough?
That was very poetic.
Thank you.
If I can add something that I've been experimenting with
Please.
recently is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Not just saying it, not taking refuge in the divine, but actually internally, not for, it's not just a phrase, but embodiment of taking refuge and being part of this, being part of the divine truth, the real. That has helped me a lot. And it's like, you know, kind of what we talked about in the other call, mercy. And it's a quality of that part of, I guess, prayer also.
For those
Seeking,
people who do not speak any Arabic, translate the phrase.
I take refuge in the divine from all that is evil.
Yeah.
And that evil is pretty much what we just talked about in this call, right? The attention suckers, the vampires that, you know, trying to take all that energy and attention and feed on our consciousness and our energy. That's pretty much what that is, right? So
Yeah.
taking refuge in the divine, meaning seeking that that bank, that ocean that we are also part of, right? That's bigger than just this body and this soul, but can connect to spirit and can connect to the greater consciousness. So using that, also leaning on that as well. I'm not just me here in this body that I have to do this all by myself, but there's a greater energy and greater life that can actually assist me and push me forward. So that has been helpful, along obviously muhasaba and muraqaba and mushahada and all of those.
And it's interesting because this circles around back to the whisperer. Because you hear the word shaitan, which is the Arabic pronunciation for Satan. And, you know, we think of the personified dude with the cloven hoofs and the pitchfork and the horns and all of that, but it's not that. It is that which lies to us, that which whispers lies in our ears. And it's evil because it treats us as object rather than subject. And it gets us to treat ourselves as object rather than subject. And when we find ourselves doing that, it has accomplished its work. So this is why Muslims use 3 surahs in the Quran, a lot other than Fatiha, of course. One of them is called Surat al-Nas, which is where the whisperer comes from. And it is an act of taking refuge in God or the divine in any way you understand it, taking refuge in the ultimate truth from those whisperers that whisper in the dark, in the night, in the scary places, in your own head. Which is as religious as I'm going to get tonight. So there you go. So we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our own souls to stay awake and to guard our persons from that which would turn us from the verb that we are into the noun that they would like us to be.
Amen.
So it's time for you to call on people who haven't said anything yet, Noor.
Okay.
Somebody ran away.
I expected that. That's okay. Who have we not heard from? Alka, are you there? What's on your mind?
Yes, I'm very much here. I there's a lot on my mind about this, but I think I need to gather it and ask questions to Mustaq on one-on-one. But I could definitely relate to everyone this week, challenging times. I had my own.
As we all do, yeah.
Yeah. And there's one thing I have learned from Mustaq during my one-on-one session, and I really, it has become almost my mantra. And that is, this is all my entertainment. This is all my entertainment. So I can see the entertainment I get into. That's the trance I get into. So, and then I remember this mantra, and it wakes me up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alka.
Who else have we got here?
Sumaya, would you feel comfortable sharing with us your thoughts or any questions you might have?
Or any answers?
I mean, it resonated with me a lot what we talked about today, because I like deleted all my social media this week because I've been thinking a lot about how my energy is going to things that just are not serving me well at all. And I think that's where like that desire to be awake comes in. But yeah, so I just found it really relevant, and it makes me feel better knowing that other people are kind of dealing with the same thing.
Yes. Yep.
Well, I'm glad that you didn't delete us.
Yeah, that's the only thing I kept Facebook just for that. I'm not even joking.
That's very generous. Thank you.
Yeah, and we promise not to abuse our privilege of being able to talk to you on social media.
Shri, how about you? You got any thoughts, questions?
I really liked your comment about how we have made Satan this thing that is really our ego, I think, is talking in my ear, and trying to deceive me because my ego wants a certain thing. And I was thinking about what happened over the weekend. I went on a yoga retreat, and everybody's giving me lots of compliments and things and wanting me to be part of the system. But a part of me also recognized that, is this my ego lapping up all these compliments and things? And you think, I can fall into that trance of adoration. or that sort of the energy of a group, not saying this group, because you don't have never even come close to that kind of thing, but sometimes when you're with a group of people, it is lovely, but you think, am I really present in this? Am I making deliberate decisions? Everything I'm going to do about this is going to be deliberate and slow, and that helps me recognize those little voices to stop me from falling into trance, you know, to just keep question. That question comes up to me, is this in line, you know, with what I'm meant to do? Is this really in line? Do I have enough energy for that? So recognizing that I have a limitation in how much energy I have in a day. So who have I allocated that to? And is there some left for me to actually continue my practice and things like that? So the trance of being overcommitted is my perfect sin. Is that you can recognize that in me, because I think, you know, especially talking to Mushtaq every week, and he does, you know, try and make it more simple for me, because I do like to overcommit, because that's the weakness, that's the trance. Then I, you know, feel like I'm kind of valuable to something or someone or the purpose or whatever, but that's not what I'm there for. The end.
The end.
No, the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, some of this reminds me of you guys know I deal with chronic pain. I'm in a pain management group right now. Every week we are doing different strategies around managing energy. Let's say, you know, you have pain that saps some of your energy. How do you do the things that matter to you? You know, even with the limitations that you might have. And it's important to make sure that some energy is always left for ourselves. And I think that we forget that, or it's easy to have that frittered away either through our own doing, or through social media, or through staying up late, or whatever it might be. So it's good to take notice of that and see what we can do to hold on to more in a way that allows us to be a cup overflowing rather than a cup depleted. All right, that's all I got, Mushtaq.
Yeah, that's all I got too. I have even less. I have less than all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we can wrap it up then. Yeah?
Let's wrap it up. Let me switch over to Brady Bunch mode. And there you all are.
Ta-da! Thanks so much, all of you, new people, familiar friends. It's so good to have you. I hope you'll join us again. And for those of you watching on YouTube, it's been great to have you along for the ride as well.
And remember to like our videos.
Like, comment, subscribe, donate, all of that. So we can wave to each other, wave to everybody watching on the replay too.
And we will see you next time.